Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're all well. Today we will be beginning our new topic all about fractions. Now, before we do that today, I have some daily fluency questions for you. Can I just remind you that you need to make sure that if you're not printing out the worksheets, that's absolutely fine. But please, can you just spend time now writing the short date, the title for today, and the daily fluency questions, and making sure you make a note of those on your piece of paper, just because then I can mark it easier. All right, so pause the video now and spend around 3 minutes on these questions, please. Off you go. Okay, question number 1. When we are finding the product of two numbers, what are we doing with them? That's right, we are multiplying them. So 6 multiplied by 8 is 48. Number 2, subtract 1,000 from 7,892. If we put this into a sum, it would look like 7,892 subtract 1,000. Now we know that we are looking at the thousands digit here, which is the 7. So if we subtract 1,000, it will be 6,892. You could have had multiple shapes that you drew here, including any of the ones that were there. So we have a square with an area of 4, a rectilinear shape with an area of 4, and a rectangle with an area of 4. Finally then, what is the area of the rectangle? Well, we can count all of the squares and find that they have 12 squares, so it has an area of 12 squares. Okay, just some more questions here now to prepare you for today's lesson. So if you pause the video again and just answer the following questions, please. Off you go. Okay, number 1, how many cubes are there all together? Well, if we count them, we can see that with the yellow and green cubes all together, we have 5 cubes altogether. How many green cubes are there? Well, we can see that there is just 1 green cube here. So, something out of something cubes are green. Well, we know that means that 1 out of 5 cubes are green. Here, how many cubes do we have this time? We can count them. We can find we have 7. How many red cubes? We can count them again. We have 3. So 3 out of 7 cubes are red. And that will help us for today's lesson, all about non-unit and unit fractions. Now, I have got 4 different shapes here, and we want to know how many of the shapes are triangles. Now, we need to represent this using a fraction. Now, how am I going to do this? Well, first of all, I can work out what each of the sections of my fraction represent. So the arrow that is pointing to the bottom box represents my denominator. Do you know what the denominator is? That's right, the denominator is how many equal parts there are. So how many parts are there all together? My top number, we're going to go back to the denominator. So my denominator, I can see, I have just counted, I have got 4 equal parts. Now going to my second, my top number, this is called my numerator. Now my numerator is how many parts we are looking at. Now we can see that we are looking for how many of the shapes are triangles. How many of the shapes are triangles here? Just 1. So here, my numerator is 1. So my denominator is how many equal parts there are. In this case, I have 4 shapes. And my numerator is how many parts we are looking at. So if I had 2 triangles, my numerator would be 2. I have got some more shapes here, but this time we want to work out how many of the shapes are green. What fraction of the shapes are green? Well, if we remember, my denominator is my bottom number of my fraction. And what was that again? That's right, how many equal parts there are. How many equal parts do I have? That's right, I have got 5 equal shapes. Now this time we want to work out how many of the shapes are green. How many shapes can you see that are green? That's right, just 1. So my numerator will be the number 1. Because I have 5 equal parts altogether, my denominator of my fraction is 5, and I am looking at 1 shape because that is my green shape. So 1/5 of the shapes are green. Now, we have just worked out two fractions here. We have found that 1/4 of the red shapes are triangles and 1/5 of the squares shapes are green. What's the same about these fractions and what's different? Can you pause the video and have a think? Okay, you might have noticed that they both have the same numerator. They have a numerator of 1. These are called unit fractions. So it doesn't matter what my denominator is. If my numerator, my top number is 1, that is called a unit fraction. Can you have a think? Well, what might be considered a non-unit fraction in that case? Have a think. So unit fractions always have a numerator of 1. Let's have a look at these cubes. We want to find out the fractions of the yellow cube, the red cubes, and the green cubes. Now, do you remember what my denominator represented? That's right, the denominator represented how many equal parts I had. In this case, how many cubes I have. So, pause the video and have a think if you can work out the fractions to each of these coloured cubes, okay? Off you go. Okay, so as we can see here, we have got one yellow cube. We have got altogether 9 yellow cubes. So my fraction of yellow cubes is 1/9. I am looking for 1 and I have 9 altogether. My red cubes, I have got 3 of them. And I know that 3 out of the 9 cubes are red. With the green, I can see that I have got 5 green cubes. 5 cubes out of the 9 cubes are green. So 1 out of the 9 cubes are yellow, 3 out of the 9 cubes are red, and 5 out of the 9 cubes are green. Now, which of these fractions is a unit fraction? Pause the video and have a think. Did you get it right? The yellow fraction represents 1/9, and that is a unit fraction because my numerator has a 1. Fantastic work. Now, these two fractions here are not unit fractions, so what must they be? Well, these fractions have a numerator that is bigger than 1. My red fraction has a numerator of 3, and my green fraction has a numerator of 5. Now, we call these fractions non-unit fractions. So my unit fraction has my numerator as 1, and my non-unit fraction has a numerator of anything bigger, greater than 1. And we need to try really hard to remember that. Now it's your turn to have a go at questions 1, 2 and 3 on the worksheet. So pause your video whilst you do this. It will be the Maths Resource 1, which has your standard worksheet on for the lesson. So pause the video now and work on that, please. Okay, how did you do? Are we ready to move on to the more harder ones now? So I have got 3 different pictures here. Now we want to show 1/4, 1 out of the 4 shapes on each of the representations. Can you pause the video, draw these shapes down on a piece of paper, exactly how they are shown on my screen, and can you have a go at just shading in 1/4 of each of the representations? When you've done that, come back to the video and we'll have a look at what I've got. Okay, did you notice that each of these shapes has got 4 parts altogether? So my denominator is 4 because each of my shapes has 4 parts. Did you also notice that because my numerator is 1, that I am only colouring in or shading in 1 part out of 4? Exactly like when we looked for the cubes, we might have found that there were 1 yellow cube out of 9. So we only have 1 cube, but this time we are only shading in 1 part of the 4 that we have. What type of fraction is 1/4? Is it a unit or a non-unit fraction? That's right, it's a unit fraction because it has a numerator of 1. You are superstars. So I can look at my first shape here. It's a square that's been cut into 4 triangles. If I want to shade in 1/4, I would shade in 1 part. Now you might have shaded in this part, or you might have shaded in this part, or this part, or this part. But as long as you've just shaded in one part of your 4 parts, you have done it. Well done. So number 2, again, we have 4 parts. You could have shaded in this triangle, or this triangle, or this one, or this one. But again, should I have shaded in 2 triangles? No, why not? That's right, because my numerator, my top number is 1, and that represents how many parts that I am dealing with, and the 4 is all together. Similarly, with my circles, I would just shade in 1, or this one, or this one, or this one. Now, this is too easy for you. Let's have a go at seeing with the same shapes. Can you this time show 3 quarters on each of the representations? Pause the video and have a go. Did you notice that because our numerator is 3, that we are going to be shading in 3 out of the 4 parts? So you may have shaded in these 3 parts. Similarly, these 3 parts, or these 3 parts. Now, it doesn't matter if you haven't shaded in those exact 3. If you have shaded in 3 parts out of your 4, then you've done it correct. What is this type of fraction called? That's right, it's called a non-unit fraction because it has a numerator that is larger than 1. Oh, now, previously we showed 3 quarters on this group of circles. But this time it's not as easy because this time we have got 8 circles that we need to show 3 quarters on. What am I going to do? Well, I can see that my denominator is 4, so I need to have 4 groups. Now, if I split my 8 circles, I can see that I can have 4 groups of 2. Now, if I wanted to find out 3 out of these 4 groups, I could begin to shade in 1 group, 2 group, and 3 groups. So I have now shaded in 3 out of my 4 groups. Now, how many counters did I colour in? That's right, I coloured in 6. So 6 out of 8 is the same as 3 quarters. Well done. Now, final question until you go on to your worksheet. Now, I'm thinking of a fraction. I've got 2 fractions that I'm thinking of. Now, the girl on the left says that my fraction has a numerator 3 less than the denominator. And the boy on the right says my fraction is a unit fraction with an odd number as a denominator. Now, you can only use these number cards once. You can't use any other numbers, and we are going to be left with 1 number. Pause the video and have a think which digit card will be left and what are the 2 fractions going to be based on the clues that they've given you. Pause the video and have a think. Did you notice that the boy has made a unit fraction? What number must be at the top of his fraction? What number must be the numerator? That's right, so we know the number 1 is going to be the numerator. Now, we know his denominator is an odd number, but we've got a few odd numbers here. So let's move on to the fraction on the left. Now, this girl says, my fraction has a numerator 3 less than the denominator. What 2 numbers have a difference of 3? Is the difference between 3 and 4 3? No, the difference is 1. Is the difference between 2 and 4 3? No, that's 2. 2 and 5 have a difference of 3. To get from 2 to 5, you have to jump 1, 2, 3. Now, we can use these digit cards to fill in her fraction because her numerator, number 2, is 3 less than the denominator, which is 5. Then we can go back to the boy, and he says that his denominator is an odd number. Which of our remaining digit cards is an odd number? That's right, it's a 3. So that means his fraction has 3 as the denominator. So 4 is the digit card that's left over. Super job, Year 4. Now it's your turn to have a go at the rest of the worksheet and then pause the video, come back and we will work on the problem solving skills.